We are live.
Welcome, everyone. Let's give it about 35 to 45 seconds for everyone to have an opportunity to join us before we begin. We'll just give it a few more seconds here to allow people to join the broadcast, and then we'll get started with our welcome and intros. All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to our complimentary webcast, Leading in a Time of Crisis, presented by Ultimate Software. Before we start, I have a few housekeeping notes for everyone. All attendees have been placed in webinar mode, which means your microphone is automatically placed on mute and your camera is automatically turned off. We are recording this webcast and will provide a copy of the recording following our event via email. We really appreciate all of you joining us today. We know you are likely still adjusting to the new normal that many, if not all of us, are currently experiencing across the globe. We hope everybody listening today is safe, healthy, and following the recommended guidelines for navigating this evolving situation. In light of current events, Ultimate has adjusted its usual in-person HR workshop schedule and setup to this live webcast format. It is our goal with these webcasts to continue to bring you and your team members the same level of expertise, analysis, and insights you expected to receive during our on-site HR workshops. And just like our regular in-person workshops, we want these events to remain as interactive as possible. So we encourage you to participate virtually. Throughout the broadcast, Morag will be asking you to participate via the chat function, again, to make this as interactive as possible. And if you have questions, jot them down in the Q&A, and at the end of our session, we'll try and answer as many as possible. So without further delay, let's get started. We are very pleased to have with us this morning Morag Barrett, CEO of an international HR consulting and leadership development company, Sky Team. Morag's experience ranges from senior executive coaching to developing high-impact teams across Europe, America, and Asia. So let's get started. Welcome, Morag. Thank you for being with us.
Thanks, Molly, and I'm excited to be here and to meet all of you from an appropriate distance wherever you are listening to this webcast. As we go through it, on your Zoom bar, you've got the emoticons. Some of you have. If you haven't, as I learned yesterday, you need to do a software upgrade. But please do type your comments in the chat. And as Molly said, if your questions come to mind, put them under the Q&A. We'll try and capture them from the chat line. But as you know, that will zoom and scroll as we go through the next 50 minutes or so together. So as I start, use the thumbs up emoticon if you can relate to any of the following. The last few weeks have been, for me, for all of us, the most turbulent that I've ever experienced in my life. It's been mind-boggling how fast we've moved from planet Earth, where we could barely agree on the color of the sky, to rallying around and aligning against the threat that COVID-19 brings. It has been an emotional roller coaster. I'm sure you're familiar with the change curve, shock anger, denial, renewed action. Well, I've been through those: shock, anger, denial, renewed action, shock, fear, anger, shock, renewed action. It feels less like a change curve and one of the most tumultuous roller coaster rides I've ever been on. And I hate roller coasters. I haven't slept well. And there has been this perpetual knot in my stomach. I felt sick, not because of excitement, but because of dread. The upside, I haven't eaten as much, so I've already lost 2 pounds. So I'm looking here and clutching at straws for the silver lining within our current circumstances. Last week, I found myself looking at those clouds of darkness and doom, and the way that I decided to respond was to sit on my couch. I was in a fug. I couldn't think straight. I couldn't focus. So I binge watched 3 seasons of The Good Fight. I binge watched 3 seasons of The Good Fight whilst also obsessively scrolling through my news feeds. And if only, as this image would imply, it was just the BBC news feed. But here I am in Colorado, it was the BBC news feed, it was reading The Guardian, it was reading the New York Times, it was the Wall Street Journal, it was watching CNN, it was watching Bloomberg. I was obsessed and I was checking my phone every few seconds. And it all showed the same picture. The same bleak picture that kept me couch locked for a week. And you know what also struck me this morning as I was reflecting and getting ready for this morning? What's happened to all the cats? The cats that were stuck in trees that our news feeds used to be full of. Here, let's hear it for the cats. So last week I realized I had to get up, I had to get back into some order of normalcy. I had to be able to take back control. And through this turbulent world, my intent in the next 30 or 40 minutes as I'm talking with you before we get to Q&A is I want to share some tools and techniques that will allow you in these turbulent times to be the best that you can be when circumstances might be causing us to be at our worst. So first, audience participation time. I'd like to do an emotional pulse check in the chat function. Please could you type for me, what are some of the emotions that you have experienced in the last few weeks, maybe the last 24 hours? What are some of the emotions that you or your friends, your colleagues, your family have exhibited in the last few weeks and few hours? I have to put my reading glasses on for this. This is the joy of virtual presentations. I'm seeing sadness and anxiety, frustration, denial, confusion. Thank you, Kathy. Fatsan, disbelief. I know, it's mind-boggling. Fear. Let's see, overwhelmed. Christina, yes, and as an HR professional, we'll touch on this momentarily. We at Sky Team are doing our best to provide lifeboat and support to all of our HR professionals as everything comes to you. Molly, stress, thank you. Ben, I feel like I don't have time to feel as I'm working to find solutions to problems I never thought I'd have. Ruby, thank you, sad. So continue to type. And as you reflect on those, and maybe you've not yet had an opportunity to contribute, what do you notice about the emotions that we've just listed there? What's the theme that connects them all? If you have a thought on what that is, please do continue to add it to the chat, as well as to continue to add the emotions that you might be experiencing. For me, as I think about it, as I listen to my friends and colleagues adjust to the new, what we hope is an interim normal, is, thank you, Peter, that they are negative. And yes, that's certainly the collective term that I and many would use, but they are intense. They are intense and some of the strongest emotions that any of us have experienced. And the key here is that we are experiencing them over a sustained period of time. Even now, I can feel the buzzing in my fingertips from the adrenaline and the cortisol that's coursing through me. And that's not adrenaline and cortisol just because I'm delivering a live keynote presentation. Those are the chemicals that our brain are releasing in response to our fight or flight trigger. So here comes a little bit of science, because I need you to understand that what you are feeling right now, what we are all experiencing right now, is normal. It is okay to have these feelings of anxiety, of doubt, of disbelief, of stress, of feeling sick. So, quick bit of science in terms of how our brain evolved. So we all have a brain stem. It doesn't think, it just is. It controls our heart rate. It controls our breathing. It controls our autonomic responses. This is what keeps us alive at night when we do finally fall asleep. At the top end, in simplest terms, is the neocortex, our grey matter. This is where our language centers reside. This is where we are able to process complex thoughts. It's how we make decisions, and it's our site of emotional memory. And right now, I want you to remember this point. It is also the site where we can picture and vision future possibilities. Because bridging the two pieces of the brain is the limbic system. And a part of that is called the amygdala. And amygdala is the Greek word for almond, because needless to say, that bit of the brain is apparently almond shaped. And this is our fight or flight response. It is our threat detection radar that is scanning everything that we see and experience and deciding, am I eating it or is it eating me? And in the last few weeks, that amygdala has been processing practically everything except chocolate as a threat. And as a result, it's shunting blood away from our neocortex. It's priming our bodies ready for fight or flight. That's why we're all so jittery. That's why we're feeling unwell. And that's why it's hard to imagine how do we respond, or even the future possibilities that things are going to get better. And we need to be able to re-engage that neocortex so that we can process the rapid amount of information that's coming at us to make the best informed decision that we can right now, even if that decision changes in a few moments or in a few days as new information comes to light. The amygdala is also connected to what's known as the vagus nerve, which runs around your neck or around your throat, to your heart, through your stomach, into your gut. That's why, for me personally, I feel this stress in my stomach, why I'm feeling sick. It's because of the direct connection to my threat detection radar. And because we're under attack, because our neocortex isn't always operating at full capacity, ready for fight or flight, it's why I'm not as articulate as I would normally like to be, either now in the safety of my own home, or if I were meeting you out in the street. So, understanding the science, I need you to recognize that for all of you, that this is normal. And as HR professionals, those threats, whether they're the internal dialogue of, oh my goodness, do I have enough toilet roll? Oh my goodness, how my kids, oh, they've started to cough. What does that mean? What about for my grandmother who's living out of state, who is at a high risk for this endemic, but I can't actually get to her? And as HR professionals, you are fair and square in the middle of the spotlight. Everybody is coming to you. This is another external threat with so many questions. How do we handle our interns? Should we keep our intern process going? Should we onboard new hires? How do we do work from home? People don't have laptops. So many questions and so few clear-cut answers. So I'm going to pause here and just ask you to share, what are some of the either mind-boggling questions that you've been asked right now? What are some of the decisions that you're having to help inform or struggle with that are impacting you in the moment? Take a second just to share in the chat. Betsy, thank you. How do we keep our workforce safe? Everything from, well, we still need to work on site. How do we get people to self-quarantine when it might just be allergies? How do we keep people safe when our workforce is now down by half maybe, and our production line requires somebody at every station? Daniela, how do we stay viable? Think about the impact if you're in the hospitality industry right now. That Band-Aid has been ripped off, and now the question is, how do we ensure that we weather this tsunami? How do we weather the storm so that we can be here in however much time it takes before we're out and socializing again? How do we help our employees who can't work and live paycheck to paycheck? So if your internal dialogue, those internal stresses weren't enough, we're now shouldering the stress of how do we support our workforce? How do we support our communities? How do we support our families and friends? Continue to share. So my first piece of advice is that we need to find a way to disconnect so that we can reconnect more powerfully, to soothe our amygdalas, so that we can re-engage our thinking brain and couple that with our emotional gut instinct to move forward the best that we can. So I'm going to ask you right now to join with me in 2 deep breaths. 2 deep breaths that will bring in and out. In and out. And I don't know about you, but even me, I can feel I've gone from a 9 to an 8. Maybe you've gone from a 7 to a 5. Those old wives' tales of breathe and count to 10. Go for a quick walk around your basement, around your kitchen table, outside if you are able. These matter because they allow you to step away so that you can step in more powerfully. Emotions are contagious. Be thoughtful about the emotions that you are putting out, but also be thoughtful of the emotions that you are taking on from others. And I realized last week when I was sitting on the sofa and the good fight came to an end, that I needed to redefine my boundaries. And Dr. Brené Brown talks beautifully about this. If you haven't seen any of her TED Talks, I would encourage you to look at these, because she talks about courage and vulnerability, 2 key skills that we all need right now. But she also talks about the importance of boundaries. So boundaries are identifying those things that you can control, those things within your control circle, so that you can prioritize your attention on those. And everything that was on your to-do list just a few weeks ago, that doesn't mean it all goes into your new control circle today. This is about identifying the critical few, the things that you absolutely need to focus on. And the rest of it, trust me, can wait. So a control circle has ripples. It's the things right within me that are surrounding me that I have immediate control over. And right now, my basic control is I make my bed in the morning. For some of you, it might be getting dressed, who knows? Then you have the things that you can influence and inform. And from there may be items in your list that you are interested in that you really need to read more about to understand when you have a moment of peace to look at it. And everything else is outside of your control. And we need to have the grace and the compassion to let those things go so that we don't add to the stress and the emotions that we may be carrying. This is an example of a control circle in action. And when I made this slide yesterday, of course, I went Googling for the song, What Does the Fox Say? Na, 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 na. So that's going through my head. And if you need some distraction, I warn you, it's the earworm you don't want. But it did make me laugh. And to be honest, it made me dance around my office here in Colorado and brought a bit of levity for a few minutes yesterday afternoon. So what can you control? You can control your attitude. I read yesterday somebody who'd set themselves a 30-minute window for all the worrying, angsting, and doom-mongering that they wanted to do each day. But for the rest of the day, they were deliberately choosing optimism. They were deliberately choosing to take baby steps on their to-do list so that they could feel more in control and able to move forward. So once you've identified your core control list, then you need to decide, well, what are you going to do next? And my friend and colleague, Eve McLean, works at the Business Ethics Alliance in Omaha. And Monday, she published this phenomenal short article on ethical choices in a pandemic. I'd encourage you to Google it and just go and read it. But what resonated for me was this 3-step model for making decisions. And given that the pace of change, new information is coming to light every minute, every hour, every day, all we can do is try to make the best decision now with the information that we have to hand. And in her recommendations, or in this model, we think first about what are the long-term, think far, what are the long-term consequences of this decision? Whether that's long-term, a week from now, a month from now, 3 months from now, try to anticipate the ripple effects. Think wide. What is the impact that this decision is going to have, not just for me, but move to the we mindset. What's the implication it's going to have for my family? What's the implication it's going to have for our workforce? What's the implications for the broader community? And then the third element of the decision is to think high, to take that 50,000-foot view to gain some perspective. How would your best boss or colleague respond to this? How would that leadership guru that you've been listening to their podcast, what might they do in this situation? So identify the things within your control circle. Decide how you're going to respond by thinking far, thinking wide, and thinking high. And before you move, remember to breathe. Pause before we rush to the next step. Right now, more than ever, I believe that a people-first approach is what matters. My first book, Cultivate the Power of Winning Relationships, is all about how to nurture ally relationships in your workplace to ensure mutual success. And there are 4 critical questions that determine whether or not you and I have an ally working relationship. They are, can I count on you? Can I depend on you? Do I care about you? And do I trust you? Can I count on you is all about, can I count on you to do your job, get your stuff done and get it back to me on time so I can get my stuff done? Can I depend on you is, will you go that extra mile, do things from just outside of your control circle and in the things that you can influence? Will you give me feedback on my spreadsheet and my presentation and help me to learn and grow? Do I care about you is, do I care about your success as well as my own? See, my brain and my mouth are disconnected because of the amygdala hijack. But do I care about your success as much as I do my own? Am I willing to lend you resources and tools because it's the right thing for the business, the right thing for that colleague? Or am I hoarding information? Am I hoarding the star talent on my team so that I could look after number 1? And then number 4, do I trust you? Now, just a few weeks ago, these questions may have been a yes or a mostly. But think about the situation we're all in right now, working remotely. Can I count on you to get your job done? Well, heck, I'm working from home for the first time. I don't even have a laptop, let alone the process or the access to the systems. No. Can you depend on me to go the extra mile? Well, my kids are home from school. They're already going stir crazy. There's a fight breaking out over the Legos downstairs. You're not going to get 8 hours of undivided attention. So no. Do I care about you? Well, I wasn't sure you cared about me when we worked in the same office. I don't remember the last time we grabbed a spontaneous coffee. And now that I'm working remotely, maybe with or without a webcam, I don't know. And do I trust you? The kicker of them all, in a time where we're all budding paparazzi, in a time where disinformation is rife, I don't know. And so without deliberate action, without planful thought to remain connected with a distributed workforce and with a distributed family, I have 3 sons. One is with me and 2 others are living elsewhere. How do we remain connected? How do we ensure the basics of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that not only do I feel safe, but I know that those important to me are safe? Then we can start getting back to the 4 yeses of, can you count on me? Can you depend on me? Do I care about you? And do I trust you? Don't let the human connections slide just because I'm now working from my home office. So how do you do that? Well, it starts with you. We have to take care of ourselves in order that we can better take care of others. Identify your anchors and your priorities, whether it is as basic as making your bed in the morning and getting dressed and putting on some lipstick for this meeting, whether it is the fact that my Virgin TRX bands in the basement are going to start getting to know me and vice versa from this weekend. Start taking care of yourself in any way that you can so that you can be of service to others. And demonstrate the grace and compassion, not just for others who may be navigating that change curve at a different stage and a different rate to you, but grace and compassion for you that allows you to live to your values and operate from a place of strength. So help me in the chat, just share a couple of anchors, maybe new habits or habits that you're reinforcing from wherever you're working and living right now that are helping to keep you grounded and to give you a sense of normalcy in very uncommon times. Please share, because I might need to adopt some of them. Back on with the glasses. So Corinna, employees look to HR for stability and the answers to all of their questions, and we don't have them. I'm going to touch on this in a moment, Corinna, but being able to say, I don't know, but let me find out, or I don't know, what should we do together, means it doesn't have to fall on you to have that silver bullet of what we should do going forward. Ben, thank you. Playing with my dog and letting him sit on my lap during meetings. There's been a meme doing the rounds. If you haven't found it, go and do it, which is my owner has been working from home and I'm the only thing keeping this team together. It's true. Let's not worry about being completely corporate. Let's start allowing a little fun and frivolity into the experience. For those of you who need it, there you go. Here's a puppy. For those of you who aren't dog lovers, then here comes, if I can get my computer under control. Stick with the puppy, but I have a kitten. I had the balloons up earlier. We have the business backdrops, but we're going for whimsy because at this time, I think some of us need whimsy. Kathy, staying calm and logical, relying on others. Ruby, I took an online yoga class yesterday with 80 people. Oh my goodness. That's fantastic. So many organizations are starting to stream their fitness and making them available. Scholastic.com is providing 3 hours of by grade level classes and content for stay-at-home kids so they can keep up with their education. Finding those resources and sharing those resources allows all of us to feel a little in control. Corinna, taking walks outside in the fresh air and maintaining 6-foot distance. Well done. And Peter, taking advantage of time to focus on professional development. It's interesting, we've talked about that at Sky Team. Out of adversity comes innovation. We're converting all of our programs to virtual delivery. We're working with small groups of leaders in our client organizations to do coaching clinics in the moment, safe areas where they can come together and say, here's what I'm facing. How do I move forward? And moderated by a Sky team coach, we can provide perspective from other organizations, their peers, maybe 5 or 6 of them in the virtual conference call can provide peer coaching too. And you know what that does? It takes a step back from them all calling you, because they know that every Tuesday at 10 a.m., they're getting on a call with me and 5 of their virtual colleagues. That's their anchor point. How can you create those virtual communities with or without our support that allows people to self-help and invest in their mental well-being without necessarily always coming to HR? So thank you for those suggestions that you just made there. So navigating the storm comes down to 3 elements: common sense in uncommon times, an uncommon discipline, and a willingness to discuss the undiscussables. Let me share a little bit more about what these mean for me. So common sense, wash your hands, people. Keep your distance, as you shared earlier on. And remember to breathe. When it comes to doubters, channel your curiosity. I decided yesterday that I'm likening it to the Father Christmas or the Easter Bunny experience, or Easter Bunny effect. Make like you believe. It can only help us all. And as leaders and as HR professionals, we need to communicate the why to our kids as to why they can't go out to play, the why to the kids as to what's going on in the real world. We've seen national leaders who've done press conferences just to answer the questions that are being raised by our youth and the children within their communities. Don't hide it, but manage the communication. And if we replace kids with co-workers, we need to understand and communicate, why am I asking you to work from home? Why am I asking you to be diligent about washing your hands, coughing into your elbow, or whatever? And let go of perfection. Decisions today may not be the right decision tomorrow. Information that we know to be true today may be different tomorrow. Perfection is the enemy of agility. And right now, we all need to be agile. So common sense, we know what we should be doing, but as with many things, there is a big gap between knowing it and doing it consistently. So the uncommon discipline is wash your hands, people, but wash your hands every time you go to the grocery store and you come back in. Wash your hands after you've put away your shopping. If you are still working in the office, create a new tiny habit of every time you go into a meeting room, you get some sanitizer and wash your hands. And every time when you come out, before you do anything else, before you touch your computer and everything else, go wash your hands again. Create triggers and new tiny habits that not only keep you safe, but keep others safe too. And please isolate even with mild symptoms. Don't go to the ER, call. Don't risk infecting others until you know for sure whether or not you've been exposed. An abundance of caution is what is required. And of course, remember to breathe. For me, as I said last week, when I was just like the fire hose consuming every news channel I could, I decided to reduce how often I check my news feeds. My new anchor, my new control circle discipline is I do it twice a day. I do a brief cursory look at night. I was doing a deep dive at night, and I think that was what was contributing to the insomnia and sleeplessness. So now I do a brief review of the headlines at night, and then in the morning I do the deep dive so that that information can be used to inform my priorities and what I need to be doing for that day. Keep communicating, keep communicating, keep communicating. And apply the control circle and the decision-making model. Think far, think wide, think high, so that you can respond versus reacting in the moment. Breathe and count to 10 so that you can slow things down, so that ultimately you can go faster. The third and final piece is that a willingness to discuss the undiscussables. I start every day at the moment at 6 a.m. Mountain Time with a call with the Marshall Goldsmith 100 coaches. If you're not sure who Marshall Goldsmith is, I encourage you to Google him. But needless to say, these calls are attended by senior leaders of great organizations from around the world and great thought leaders, all sharing their experiences of what it's like to be shelter at home, whether it's Italy, Spain, Australia, South Africa, India, Singapore, the US, South America, just some of the locations that were represented on the call this morning. Last week, Marshall Goldsmith called me out. He called me out, he called himself out, and he called out a few others on the call because during the web conference, I and they had been touching our face. Now, the reality is the risk of me getting the virus in my own home when I know I've not seen any other human beings for the last 10 days is low. But the reason he needed to call it out, and it was so right to do it, is that if I'm doing it here, I'm doing it in the car, I'm doing it in the grocery store, I'm doing it out and about where the risk is much higher. So call out the unproductive behaviors. And that brings me to risk tolerance. I now have my youngest back at home, a freshman from university who has all of the exuberance and optimism of youth. He has a low risk tolerance to the COVID-19 pandemic, thankfully coupled with a high awareness and understanding of what's going on. I would say I'm a moderate risk. I'm watching the news in the UK where my family are. I'm watching the news in the US for where my friends and colleagues are. I'm watching the news globally just to understand the impact and what might be coming to us here in Colorado and in the US in the next few weeks. And when I compare that to friends and family who are most definitely high risk, either because of underlying conditions or suppressed immunization, that makes a difference for how we respond. So have that conversation. Understand what is your risk tolerance and how will you work and live together to navigate this storm. And of course, don't forget to breathe. Seek out reliable news sources. The CDC, the major news stations, filter it. It is not Aunt Betty's Facebook feed. Try to avoid resharing things that might be hype or things that might be drama. It's important because if we're going to make informed decisions, an abundance of caution is important. Pragmatic answers are important, but also informed answers are what is important. Make the implicit explicit. And as I said earlier in response to one of your questions, as HR professionals, do not feel like you have to have the answer in the immediate moment. It is okay to say, I don't know, let me find out. Or ideally, I don't know, how about we form a pandemic committee? You help me to find out so that we as an HR team can manage the workflows accordingly. And communicate consistently and unfailingly the why and the changing why. Because in the absence of information, especially now where emotions are raised, where there is uncertainty about the outcomes, where there is no clear right answer, if you are not communicating consistently and unfailingly, even the same message day in, day out, I am going to assume the worst. I am going to write negative stories. I am going to feel more disconnected. And those 4 yeses, those 4 no's become 4 hell no's, which can only exacerbate the situation. So common sense with an uncommon discipline and a willingness to discuss the undiscussables. But as I said earlier, people first. We need to maintain a sense of community. We need to keep our human side front and center. Social distancing does not mean and cannot mean social isolation. Look for ways to maintain community with virtual pop-up sessions, maybe with fun and humorous backdrops. At SkyTeam, we have a corporate bartender series that we're running for HR professionals every Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 4:30 Mountain Time. It's a bring a cocktail, bring the most challenging people questions. We don't have answers either, but what we can do is share the pool's resources and expertise from the attendees that may save you from reinventing the wheel and may accelerate your ability and responsiveness in the moment. It's also an opportunity we collate and curate the reliable resources like scholastic.com, like Core Power Yoga doing their free yoga classes. Lifetime Fitness just announced a whole load of body weight classes that you can do in your own home. We're curating the legal links from the government as new bills are passed. We're sharing the CDC information so that we can create a one-stop location for those in our network to be able to dive in versus go and hunt for it. We have castaway calls for small business owners who are thinking about, how do I maintain revenue? How do I reach out to my clients without being a distraction? How do I morph from being an in-person business to a virtual business? And as I described earlier on, we're doing our coaching clinics for small groups of people managers to support them on how do I lead and work remotely so that they're not bugging you in HR, so that you can focus on those strategic priorities. But it's not just virtual pop-up sessions for work, it's also for home. Personally, my other half is in New York City and I'm here in Colorado. We don't know the next time we're actually going to be able to get together in person, but we will set up video calls. We will cook dinner together, even with the 2-hour time difference. We will sit down and eat dinner together. There are ways to remain connected even when we have the social distance. So create your lists, check in on the people who are important to you, workers, friends, colleagues, clients, vendors, the humans that matter to you and for whom you matter. Create that list and do your rounds, whether it's an email, whether it's a text message. Doesn't matter if you get me live, leave me a voicemail, because when I pick it up, every micro reach out is processed by the subconscious, by the human body as an outreach of love. And right now, those human connections, even in a virtual form, are what is most important, so that whilst we are apart, we can be together and navigate this tsunami effectively. So as I come to the end of my part of today, I realize that 30 minutes or so is not very long. I'd ask you, please do connect with me. If you want to know more about the virtual sessions that we're doing, or just how to do fancy backdrops, a quick Zoom lesson on how to do breakout rooms and conferencing, get in touch with me. I am more than happy to help. And remember to breathe. Disengage so that you can re-engage more powerfully. And this too will pass. So at this point, I'm going to pause and ask you, what's top of mind? How can we be of service to each other and this community on this webcast today? Please type your questions in the Zoom chat, type your questions in the Q&A. How can we help you to be the best that you can when circumstances, external and internal, may be causing you to feel a little sideways and a little spun up? Thank you for your time today. It's been a pleasure. And I will be here certainly for the next 15 minutes or so, either one-to-one questions or group questions. Thank you. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Kathy. Oh, Kathy's asking, have we heard or do we believe there will be a state or federal funds to assist with some of the chaos? I'm not sure which state you're in, Kathy. I don't know if you're in the Boston area or elsewhere in the US. So I don't have the specific answer to that, but we can have a look and obviously watch the headlines. Thank you, Peter. Stay safe, stay well, stay strong. Oh, Kathy, you're in Utah. Send me a link afterwards and we'll see what we can find out from our end. And then between us, we can get the answer. I know there's a lot of bills and a lot of things that are being talked about that haven't yet been passed. When I've been watching the stimulus plans, both for the US economy and also back in the UK too. I think it's going to be a matter of time that we will find out. Corinna, a great way. Thank you. Betsy, I'm not sure if I missed it. I have a 3-year-old asking me questions during this. Oh, well, that's fabulous. If only we had cameras, we could have waved. Will you send the deck out? Absolutely. You may have this. Feel free to use it. For those of you still on the call, here's a bit of fun for you. If you want to email me, I think I used a number of different mugs during this webcast. If you want to email me and tell me how many different mugs did I use, I'll send you out a copy of my book. I have a feeling we're all focused on other things. But yes, we will make sure that you get a copy of these slides afterwards. Actually, Molly, can you confirm that? Can you see email addresses?
Yes, we'll make sure everybody gets a copy of the deck. We'll provide everyone that's participating today with a link to this recorded webcast, as well as we'll provide some additional resources in the email. We'll link to some things that you have available. Ultimate Software has a COVID-19 resources page up,
Yeah.
so we'll provide a link to that as well. And we will distribute that via email, and it probably will not go out until Monday.
Okay, and everybody, if you're like me and you did a made-up email just to get into the room, then connect with me on LinkedIn. Let me know that you did that and you'd like the information. I'll send you the PDF of the slides, but I'll make sure that Molly also gets your business email so that you get the advantage of all of the Ultimate Software curated resources too. So there is always a plan B in this world. If you skipped the email entry, then just get in touch with me via LinkedIn. Let me know that you are here and we will make sure that you get that information. Are there any other questions that we can help answer for you today? Here we go, there's the cat. In that case, I'm going to stay here until Marvin either lets me know that everybody has dropped off. I wish you every success. As I said to Peter, stay safe, stay strong, stay healthy. And I look forward to at some point meeting you all in person. And Molly, do you want to close out with some final thoughts as well?
Absolutely. So thank you so much, Morag, for being with us today. I agree with one of the attendees that said that this was a great way to start the day. For me, it really helped to kind of dispel some of those overwhelmingly negative thoughts that are running rampant. So we really appreciate you being with us. As Morag said, to everybody that's still on, you can find her on social. Her website is skyeteam.com, and that's SKYETEAME, or no E at the end, team, skyeteam.com. As I mentioned, the Ultimate Software website has a COVID-19 resource page, which we'll provide links to in the follow-up email. And as I said, the email should be going out on Monday that gives you some resources.
Thanks, Molly. I just put that back up with the Skye team. Isle of Skye, west coast of Scotland. I spend my whole life having to type it, so, and spell it.
So yes, so Marvin, I think that we can conclude this broadcast. I don't see any questions in the chat box, and I don't see anything in the Q&A.